Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're making red lentil dal tadka. To start this dish, I didn't have any ghee in my kitchen, so we're going to make some clarified butter, which we can use as a substitute. So over low heat, I've added a tablespoon and a half of unsalted butter. We're just going to heat this up slowly and gently, and as those milk fats start to separate and rise to the top, we're just going to use a spoon to scrape it off and discard it. We want this to be a beautiful golden yellow, and a beautiful clear clarified butter. Once we've achieved that, we can shut off the heat and set this aside until we're ready to use it. Now for our mise en place, we have a 1-inch piece of ginger and 2 cloves of garlic. I'm just giving these a rough choppity chop because we are going to puree this in a little mini chopper. So just breaking down that ginger and then breaking down our garlic, and we're going to use our mini chopper just to blend this until we get almost a paste. Once that's achieved, we can scrape it out and place it in a little dish and set this aside. We're going to add this to our lentils. We also need an additional 1.5-inch piece of ginger and 4 cloves of garlic for our tadka. So I'm not going to puree this as finely as I did for the lentil ginger and garlic. I want there to be a little texture. So as you know, I've mentioned before, I like to slice my ginger up first and then chop my garlic over it. It just helps break down that fibrous ginger a little easier. Let's get the appropriate size little side dish. And the reason I put things in separate dishes is because they go into separate components of our dish and they go in at separate times. For the tadka as well, we need 1 medium onion. I'm just placing my hand flat over 1/2 so I can cut through horizontally, and then going in and cutting vertical strips. The reason you want to place your hand flat is because it keeps your fingers safe. You don't want to cut your phalanges while you're doing this. We're just going to chop that up into an even-ish dice. We're going to pop this in a bowl and set this aside. We also need 1 green chili. I'm using a serrano here, just cutting that in half. If you don't like the heat, take out the seeds and the ribs because that is where that all lives. And then just chop this up into a thin strip. Practicing my knife skills here, I'm getting a little better. I do recommend wearing gloves during this process. I didn't and wound up touching my eye later, and it was not fun. Now I have 2 tomatoes on the vine here. These are smallish, so you could use 1 large tomato if you have a nice beefsteak tomato at home. We're just going to rough chop this up into a dice. We're going to saute this down, and it is going to break down. So I'm not being too precious about my cuts here. Now for the dal itself, I have 1 cup of red lentils. I've rinsed this 3 or 4 times just to wash off any of the dust and even that extra starch that might be stuck to the outside of our lentils. Popping that into a large saucepan. And we're going to cover this with 4 cups of water. I'm also going to have a reserve cup of water to the side in case my lentils drink up all that water I've added. To this, we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt and 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric, as well as 1 tablespoon of our garlic and ginger that we finely minced. We're going to bring this up to a boil over high heat on the stove. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to lower the temperature and let this simmer for 15 minutes. Now, as I've mentioned before, I have a favorite burner. So once this comes to a boil, I'm going to transfer this over to a different burner and place a large saute pan on this burner. To this, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of our clarified butter or ghee if that's what you're using. We're going to add in 1/2 tablespoon of cumin seeds. We're going to let this toast for about a minute. We want to release all those essential oils. After a minute, we can add in our onions. Stir this around. We're going to let this cook for about 4 minutes. Now with Indian food, the onions and the garlic tend to be a lot darker, but that's okay, that's flavor. Checking on our lentils, they look pretty good. I haven't had to add any more water yet. You can see how dark these onions are, but that's just full flavor. Now we can add in our chopped chilies, our ginger, and our garlic, and we're going to saute this for an additional minute. Now we can introduce our tomatoes, as well as 1 tablespoon of coriander, a half a teaspoon of kosher salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of hot paprika. We're going to stir this around and let this cook for about 3 minutes just so those tomatoes start to break down. After 3 minutes, we're going to add in a ladleful of our dal. We're going to use this to deglaze the pan, get up all those beautiful brown bits on the bottom, and basically clean the bottom of our tadka pan. Now moving back over to my favorite burner, we're going to add all of that tadka back into our lentils. We're going to let this cook for about 2 minutes just so all those flavors can integrate. This is smelling amazing. Now we're going to add in a half of a teaspoon of garam masala and a 1/4 cup of cilantro leaves. We're going to let this cook for an additional 2 minutes. And then we should be ready to give this a taste for seasoning. And I'm going to add in about a teaspoon of kosher salt. And now we're ready to plate. So I cooked some jasmine rice. I didn't have any basmati, but I did have jasmine. I crushed up 2 cardmom pods and steamed this rice. And I added whatever clarified butter I didn't use to cook the tadka into the rice and mix that around. We're going to top this with our beautiful dal. This will thicken up as it cools down, and it gets thicker the next day if it sits in your fridge, but I don't mind all of this beautiful soupiness. We're going to garnish this with a little bit more cilantro. I have some store-bought naan here. Let's give this a taste. The lentils have broken down, they're soft, and all of the flavors of the coriander, the cumin seeds, that garlic, that ginger, the garam masala, it adds this complex, spicy, gorgeous flavor. The tomatoes add acidity and sweetness. And the cilantro adds just that little hint of freshness. This is a heartwarming, delicious vegetarian dinner idea, and I hope you all try to make this, but there it is. Dal Tadka. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a like. If you loved it, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because I put out new videos every Thursday. Thank you again, and until next time, happy cooking. That has to be the best smell on earth. Garlic, ginger, freshly brewed coffee, and yes, bacon.